permit their slaves to gather, giving no chance for voodoo to breed here natively. The Creole also knew enough about the corrupted pagan practices of the West Indies slaves to ban the importing of slaves from that region.
So, how did voodoo come to New Orleans?
After the Louisiana Purchase, American legislators relaxed regulations. Slaves were permitted to gather. The Americans also removed the ban on West Indies slaves. Around the same time, a slave revolt occurred in Santo Domingo, what is now Haiti. Between the lifting of the ban and the Haitian revolt, West Indies slaves began pouring into New Orleans. Some of them were free people of color, freed or escaped slaves. Some came with their white owners who were fleeing from the revolt.
What happened when the West Indies slaves got here?
They brought voodoo with them. The native slaves were more than enthusiastic about embracing it. It gave them power, Mr. Knight, if only in the form of a communal bond. Among the first meeting places were the Bayou Saint John and the shore of Lake Pontchartrain. The early voodoos were heavy snake worshippers, worshipping the one they called the Great Zombie.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
By 1817, the voodoo activities were beginning to cause fear among the white slave owners. An ordinance was passed to forbid slave gatherings except in designated public areas at designated times. The time was Sunday afternoons and the place, Congo Square. The slaves and free people of color gathered to dance simulations of their voodoo dances right in sight of Creole society. Of course, they also continued to meet in private for the real thing.
Okay, I'm back. So this is, again, what I really love about the Gabriel Knight games is the way they mix history with, you know, the supernatural stuff and the mysteries and stuff. I really like how you learn actual history while playing this and stuff, yeah. Like everything he said about historical voodoo is true. So, yeah. Alright.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
There were a variety of kings and queens at first, priests and priestesses. But from about 1830, a single power emerged. This was a voodoo queen named Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau ruled voodoo in New Orleans for many years.
Marie Laveau. And I've seen her tomorrow.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
I've given you as much detail as I can, Mr. Knight. Look around the museum if you desire more information.
Yeah, the problem with Michael Dorn in this game is that his accent goes all over the place, his tone of voice. Yeah, I think this is the first time he ever tried to do voice acting in Gabriel Knight. I mean, in Gabriel Knight was the first time. And yeah, he's kind of all over the place. But, I mean, his actual acting is good. It's just his keeping his accent and stuff consistent is... yeah, it's way off. Okay, how about... I'll ask about Marie Laveau later. Actually, no, I'll ask...
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
There were actually two Marie Laveaus, mother and daughter. Most people thought they were the same woman. Her continued youth added to the mystique. The original, the mother, was also known as Widow Paris. It was she that began the empire. When the Widow Paris began to practice, there were many voodooans in the city. By 1830, she was voodoo queen of all New Orleans.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
The Widow Paris was a hairdresser for rich Creole ladies. She also paid household servants to spy for her. Between the two, she knew everything about everyone who mattered in New Orleans. She was not above using her information to appear psychic, to intimidate, or even to blackmail.
You sound as though you admire her.
For a black woman in the mid-1800s to gain power is an incredible thing, Mr. Knight. However she achieved it.
I think in the remake he says for a woman of color. So that's interesting.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
She kept a pet snake, danced with it too. She held traditional voodoo ceremonies out by the lake. She took herself seriously, very seriously. But she was not above selling tickets for her events to curiosity seekers. She was not above using voodoo any way she could to make money. That is for certain. But if she had been in another line of work, in another age, that would have been interpreted as entrepreneurial genius rather than a sign of fraudulence.
Hey, you don't need to convince me. I admire anyone that can actually make a living. Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
It was Marie Laveau who defined the voodoo that is truly and uniquely the voodoo of New Orleans. She invented hundreds, if not thousands of spells, potions, charms, and incantations. These form the basis of the modern practice, not to mention the folk tradition of hoodoo.
Hoodoo.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
Her daughter, Marie Glapion, took over when the widow Paris got old. Most people thought it was the same Marie Laveau. Both Maries encouraged that point of view. The widow Paris died in 1881. Marie Glapion had been reigning a long time by then. After the death of the widow Paris, other voodoo queens surfaced, and by 1890, the cult was fragmented again. Marie Glapion just sort of faded away.
Tell me more.
The Laveau tomb, where one or both of the Maries are believed to be buried, is in St. Louis Cemetery number 1. It is a popular shrine for practitioners and tourists alike. I myself take tours through the cemetery on a regular basis.
Really? Do you have any running this week?
No, but the cemetery is open to the general public as well.
Bling, 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 bling.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
You have heard everything about Marie Laveau that a layman might expect to understand.
Okay. Let's talk about the voodoo murders.
What do you know about the voodoo murders?
The killings in the newspaper? I know that they have nothing to do with true voodoo in New Orleans.
What makes you think the voodoo murders aren't being done by local practitioners?
Voodoo is a popular boogeyman, Mr. Knight, especially in New Orleans. Anyone can pretend to use it, just as anyone can pretend to be a black belt in karate, and for the same reason, to intimidate. I know voodoo in this city, Mr. Knight, and believe me, it is not about killing. Even the police have stated that the killings have nothing to do with local voodoo.
So you know nothing about the voodoo murders case?
I neither know nor care to know, Mr. Knight. My only possible interest is in how it might affect the public's attitude towards the museum. So far, it has not been an issue. No one has even had the bad taste to bring it up. Until you, that is.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
It is one of the important ceremonial nights in voodoo.
What else can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I am afraid I do not know the origins of St. John's Eve, I only know that it was a night of ritual long before voodoo came to New Orleans.
Do you have any idea what Quatre Saint-Gar means?
I fear my French is not all it should be, Mr.
Have you ever heard of a Schottenjäger?
No, I have not.
Oh, really, Knight? Do you think he's in a voodoo cult? Oh, really? Really?
Tell me about yourself.
Me?
Yes, if you don't mind.
What is it you wish to learn?
Why did you open a voodoo museum?
The subject has fascinated me all my life, and I wanted to help preserve the cultural heritage it represents.
What's funny is I'm actually currently watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Worf is in it. I think he joins in like season 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know. Anyways, I'm in the last season, but some of the times he sounds just like Worf, and sometimes he doesn't. But you bet he kills people. Why would you think that? No, he doesn't kill people. Actually, no, he doesn't kill people. Well, no, he doesn't.
What kind of background in voodoo do you have?
Let us say that I cut my teeth on it, Mr. Knight. It is in my blood.
Do you do anything besides run the museum?
No. The museum does not make me a rich man, but my material needs are simple. I prefer to focus on my one true interest in life.
What are your own religious beliefs?
He's not going to tell you.
My beliefs are too personal and too complex to discuss with a layman, Mr. Knight.
I wish Knight had a retort for that. Oh well.
Just tell me anything.
I am originally from the West Indies myself, you know.
Really? What brought you to New Orleans?
I was drawn here for personal reasons.
Yes, it is true that he can kill you in the game, but in general, he is not the killer. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to really spoil the game for people that that will watch this in the future. I'm going to be posting this on YouTube. I don't want to spoil everything, so I would explain it, but I'm not going to, and I don't want you to either. But yeah.
Just tell me anything.
I am a vegetarian.
Really? I can't imagine living without meat.
That must be the hunter in you, Mr. Knight.
Just tell me anything.
I do not care for small talk, Mr. Knight.
Just tell me anything.
I am not an easy person to get to know. I am a very private man.
Isn't that unusual for someone in the museum business?
Not at all. My displays speak for me.
Just tell me.
Not everyone can come see the museum, so I occasionally do public speaking on the subject of historical voodoo.
Anything coming up that I might attend?
No. But then, you have me all to yourself right now, do you not?
Just tell me anything.
I am originally...
Okay.
Really?
I will...
Okay.
Actually,
Then,
Alright, let's see. We did historical. We did not do Malia
do you know Malia Getty?
should I?
She referred me to your museum.
Many have read about our museum in the newspapers, Mr. Knight.
That's a good point.
How long ago did you play this game, Knight? Like, was it like in '93 when it came out? Was it in the '90s or was it later? Because I didn't play it till 2003 or 2002, somewhere around there. Okay, let's talk current.
Tell me about current voodoo.
Many people think of voodoo in terms of magic spells or grigri. That kind of practice is actually called hoodoo, and is only a part of true voodoo. Voodoo,
10 years,
the
yeah,
religion,
okay.
has a strong following in New Orleans. In fact, it is growing quite rapidly. There are several voodoo churches or temples in the city, and others all across the United States. African Americans see it as a tradition all their own. Whites, and there are many in their religion, are attracted to it because they think it is exotic. I, personally, am more interested in the history of voodoo. Some of the new movements are copying Haitian or even African voodoo. But it is the voodoo of New Orleans that I find so intriguing.
Voodoo.
Tell me more about current voodoo.
There are many voodooians in New Orleans. They often do business selling gree-gree, telling fortunes, providing luck, and occasionally misfortune. Perhaps you would like to meet a voodooian. We refer those who seek a deeper experience with voodoo to a local practitioner, Magentia Moonbeam.
Sure, I'd love to meet her.
She lives on the corner of Orleans and Dauphine. I will call her and tell her you might stop by.
Great, thanks.
The thing is, he sends him to her because he thinks she's like a kook, like just a dumb, not really, he doesn't really respect her voodoo stuff. He thinks she's just a crock, and it's funny is that she's actually helpful in the investigation, so I find that very amusing. Okay, start with...
Tell me more about
Yeah, okay. How about hoodoo?
what exactly is hoodoo?
Hoodoo refers to magic folk traditions of the South. Hoodoo is a bastard of voodoo. Many of the gree-gree are similar, but hoodoo does not have the religious aspects of voodoo.
Hoodoo.
Is there anything else I should know about hoodoo?
Not if your interest is primarily in voodoo. Hoodoo is of interest to those who study rural folk traditions, but it will not aid you in understanding true voodoo.
Hoodoo.
Is there anything else I should...
Not if you're hoodoo.
I think we've talked about everything. Let me try Melly again.
Are you sure you don't know Malia Getty?
Quite sure, Mr. Knight.
Okay, I think that's everything. Okay. Now, hoodoo. That's right, Jim. Why can I not talk to him about the snake?
The snake, Doc. The snake.
Oh, let's flip the switch while Dr. John is in here.
Gabriel has no interest in the noisy fan at the moment.
Oh, okay. Right. Let's go. Where are we going, anyways?
I'll be going.
Come back to
Day
the game.
2. Oh, magenta. Yeah. Right. And then... not Napoleon House, that'll be tomorrow, day 3. Don't need to do anything at Dixieland today, that's tomorrow as well. Or maybe even the day after. Getty, can't do anything there. Grandma Night, nothing. Okay, yeah, so we're just going to Moonbeams. Oh, well, maybe Jackson Square as well. That might be tomorrow.
Welcome, Seeker. You must be the one Dr. John called me about.
I guess so. My name is...
Wait? Gabriel Knight?
You're too quick for me.
Her voice has always reminded me of Sally Field.
Actually, Dr. John told me. You have come to the right place, Mr. Knight. Tell me how I can help.
Like if Sally Field was doing a really kind of somewhat annoying high-pitched voice, it sounds just like her to me. I don't think that's who it is. I don't know who does her voice, but I don't think it's anyone notable.
The mask is made of carved wood and looks African.
African.
Magentia's bottles probably contain secret ritual concoctions.
Is it Matrix or Multrix or Ma-1-trix? Hello, Australia. Hello from America. From Ohio, specifically.
A glass lamp hangs from a chain over the table. The Moonbeam residence looks like a cross between a voodoo temple and a Victorian fortune teller's parlor by way of Haight Street. A large Apparently, Magenta is not a fastidious housekeeper. A shed skin shares the cage with its original owner. A large...
Okay. What else is to look at? Crystals?
It's a large cluster of quartz crystals. A large crystal ball is prominently displayed. Magenta Moonbeam is wrapped in gauze and silks. She looks vaguely mysterious and mysteriously vague.
Okay, so I know I can show her some stuff, but let's just talk to her first. Let's do some small talk.
Dr. John tells me you're a voodoo practitioner of some kind.
Yes, I am a voodoo yen, a voodoo priestess.
She's pretty quiet.
Do you get many people in here on an average day?
Some days the need for my power is greater than others. But I have many regular clients who would be lost without my vision, Mr. Knight.
I can imagine. That's a great-looking mask on the wall.
It's from Africa, a gift to me from Queen Tabitha.
That was Queen Tabitha.
Do you know Dr. John well?
Oh, yes. We are old friends. Those with gifts are often drawn together.
So, let's say I came to you wanting to attract a woman. Well, what would you advise?
Oh, I wouldn't think you'd have any trouble attracting women, Mr. Knight.
No. I guess I don't. So, what advice do you give your clients?
I tell them to follow the light, beware of the darkness, and always get expert spiritual advice from someone with the sight.
That's what I thought you'd say. Do you get many people in here on an average day?
Some days the need, but I have many regular clients who would...
I can imagine.
Okay. Yeah.
Could I ask you a few questions?
Of course, Seeker.
It's 6 in the morning over there? Wow. Let's just start at the top.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
My practice is mainly selling charms and potions with magic power, such as gree-gree and voodoo oils. You know, everything from unrequited love to wandering spouses to winning a lawsuit. But my spells and charms are powerful, and they work.
What can you tell me?
Much of a voodoo yen's work is protecting her clients from the spell of others. I make special protective gree-gree to be worn in secret. They keep evil spells from working against my clients.
What can you tell me about?
The recipes for voodoo charms have been handed down from master to apprentice for centuries.
What can you...
I have told you all that is proper for you.
Okay. The voodoo.
What do you know about the voodoo murders?
Why, that has nothing to do with me and my clientele. But I can tell you that you should stay as far from it as possible. There is badness there. Very bad.
Really? You think so? They're murders. But yeah.
So you don't think the voodoo aspects of the case are fake?
Fake? Let me tell you about fake. If I get information through the grapevine and make use of it, is that fake? No. That is part of a voodoo yen's power. If people don't believe, there is not much I can do. But if they do believe, that is a part of my power too. But there are things, monsieur, things not even a little bit fake, I can tell you. Believe it or not, but stay away from it.
What do you mean? Do you know something about the case?
I work hard on fine-tuning my spiritual antenna, Monsieur Knight. And I get a clear signal from that direction. Beware.
What do you mean?
I work hard.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
New Orleans is the center of voodoo practice in the United States.
What can you tell...
It is a fascinating city with many dark secrets.
What can...
It is my favorite place in the world.
What can you...
It is my...
Do you know anything about snakes?
Snakes? You mean like my beloved Grimwald? She's a python, you know. Quite deadly in the wrong hand. I was trained by one of the great voodoo queens to learn how to hypnotize and handle snakes.
Tell me more about snakes.
Oh, I wouldn't want to give away my trade secrets.
What's the significance of St. John's Eve?
St. John's Eve? It is the greatest night of the voodoo year. There is always a traditional conclave on St. John's Eve. Most of our voodoo churches these days hold functions in the church hall. But in the old days, they had ceremonies out in the wild, and they wore animal masks and had a huge bonfire and dancing. I used to go when I was an apprentice. Sometimes in the swamp, you know. Bayou St. John. Sometimes at the lake, Lake Pontchartrain.
What's the significance?
Special ceremonies are performed, and the Loa come to ride the faithful.
I'm surprised Loa didn't show up there.
What's the significance?
There is no night more powerful to voodoo magic.
What's the...
There is no...
Do you have any idea what Caprice Saint Coeur means?
No. No, I don't.
Do you have any idea? Do you know anything about Marie Laveau?
Oh, yes. She was the first of the great voodoo queens.
Do you know anything?
She ruled voodoo in New Orleans for 100 years, they say.
Do you know any...
I'm sure a historian could help you with that, if you want to know more.
Sorry, my ear was itching. Alright,
Tell me about the animal masks.
I saw them used once or twice when I was younger, but you don't see them much anymore. They are too... close.
Too close to what?
Just bad karma.
Tell me about...
I don't know what else to say about that.
you know, I've never had Vegemite or Marmite or any of the mites. I don't even know if they sell them over here. I think I might have seen Vegemite in a store once, but I didn't... Well, I've never actually gone looking for it, so maybe... Who knows? Chantilly.
Have you ever heard the word Chantilly?
I don't know anything about that.
I don't know why I bother even asking people about that. I know none of them know anything about that. Knight, I'm not so sure about that.
Tell me about yourself.
Yes? What would you like to hear?
How'd you get into this business?
I trained in the voodoo arts for many years with the great Queen Tabitha.
Really? Who's she?
You have never heard of her? For shame! I can see you know little of the world of magic.
I'm beginning to get that impression, yes. What kind of people come to see you?
Seekers after the truth, such as yourself.
Do you do anything else?
I am a voodoo yen, and that is plenty. It takes much spiritual effort.
How many voodoo yens are there?
No one knows exactly. Many practice in secret. There are probably hundreds. But of course the level and the power of the voodoo yens differ greatly, depending on their training and natural gifts.
Tell me anything at all.
I haven't always lived in New Orleans. I came here from Kansas as a young woman.
Tell me any...
I began studying voodoo more than 20 years ago. I am well versed in the magical art.
Tell me...
Many non-believers come to me. They are usually